Welcome in to the first NIL Education episode here at Behind the Wall. I am joined by my first guest, Nate Bauer. Nate,
What's up?
thank you for joining me, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, 20 years on the beat.
That's true.
That's impressive.
That's true. I've been around for a while. It was a long time ago that things started. And appropriately, NIL is maybe the biggest change in anything that I've covered in my career for 20 years. So this is a great opportunity to talk about it.
It is. I appreciate it. I heard from the fans, everybody. Everybody wants to talk NIL. That's all you hear about. And so I said, hey, let's turn this into an NIL Education Podcast. We're going to bring someone on each week, whether it be kind of more at a local level, the Penn State beat writer, get some national guys on three, and we'll get out there and then just get these opinions, start talking NIL, and educate as many people as possible as what's going on, the new laws that are coming out, changes that are being made to players being able to be paid. A lot of stuff to go over, so it should be really exciting. So follow along on this series. I am really excited about this one. But Nate, man, first let's start off. Just look, he's cracking up, man.
Yeah. No,
I got him in a pressure cooker here. This is the first time. This is the first time we recorded the summer here, and no fan going. So that was a rookie mistake here on my part. So I apologize. I'm putting Nate under the pressure cooker, but we're gonna get going here. I want to start off first with a lot of people. They don't even know what is NIL. So let's start off. I mean, everything that I threw out, we'll both talk about. But your take on what is NIL?
NIL is player compensation in a world without contracts, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the way that the NCAA. It's this middle ground, right, where the NCAA didn't want to abandon the idea of amateurism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's built atop amateurism. That players, are not being paid. They can receive all of the full benefits of being a college student athlete, right? Which is fine if appropriate for maybe 80 years ago, right?
Right.
The game of college football and men's college basketball, and to a lesser extent women's college basketball, all outpaced, right, this idea of what amateurism is. And so the workaround, in light of a Supreme Court decision a few years ago that went 9-0, right?
That never happens.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, that does not happen in the Supreme Court.
So 9-0 saying, look, NCAA, this is baloney. What you guys are trying to pull, saying that these players cannot earn off of their image and likeness is nonsense. But what you saw was a very quick evolution where it's like, okay, in concept, you're opening the door for players to do stuff like this, right? To Drew Aller and Kellogg's, right?
Yeah.
Nick Singleton and Gatorade.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But that's not what it is, right? Like, that's not what NIL is. NIL is, okay, the programs that figured it out the fastest and knew going into this that this was what it was going to be is, hey, we're going to collect a slush fund. We're going to make it's called a collective. We're going to put as much money into a pot as we possibly can. And like Major League Baseball, right, there's no cap. There's no cap on it. So you can try to get as much money into that fund as you possibly can, and then you're going to use it based on the personnel that you have in your team to pay your players. That gives you a baseline of salary and compensation above and beyond room and board, right? Tuition, all the things that come with normally being a Penn State player that say, okay, you're going to get X amount of dollars on top of that. That is the brief version of NIL.
I like it. Well, the SEC's been doing that for a long time.
That's
so
correct.
they were ready, guns loaded, ready to go with that.
Correct.
So, yeah, I do think there is some teams playing catch up, and I think we have definitely found Penn State in a little bit of that scenario. I think there is some – and I don't know, we'll get into this. But first, actually, I want to start off with there was a new rule change that just came through that effective August – and you correct me if I'm wrong at all, but effective August 1st, the NCAA ruled that now all colleges are allowed to facilitate NIL deals for their players they still cannot directly pay them. So, they still need to find that go-between. They can go to the local, Ford dealership and say, hey, let's get a deal between you and Nick Singleton. And they can hammer out all the details. Hey, you're going to pay him X amount over this many months. But they just cannot take that money from that business and give it to Nick. They have to either get the business to pay it directly to Nick, or whether this is still we keep the third-party collectives.
Yep.
Personally, I think so. Yeah, like I said, you still can't directly pay the guy. So there still is that, not making them a employee. That I think that's the line they're trying not to cross.
Correct.
But where I think we are very close to be headed to is these guys becoming employees, and we've seen it. A couple states legislature around the nation have ruled that you are allowed. I think Virginia just had a recent ruling that you are allowed to sign your players directly and players be paid from the university. So how soon do you think we see that as a NCAA whole standing? Some states have that ruling, but PA does not. PA, the university, cannot directly pay the athletes as of right now.
Yeah, so it is coming, right? Where that is an intermediary. That's, again, nonsense. It's just it's trying to hang on for dear life to, again, the idea of amateurism, but it really should be, hey, AT&T, right, a sponsor of Penn State. You pay Penn State however many millions of dollars a year it is for your ad in the stadium, for your sponsorship. You are the official cell phone provider of Penn State, right? Penn State should be able to say, yeah, we're going to take X amount of those dollars, we're going to siphon that off and put it into a pot, and that is the player compensation fund, right? The television deals, right? All of the Big Ten schools have access to what is it, $42 million a year, right, with the new Big Ten deal. You're going to use half of that money, a quarter of that money, whatever the percentage is that makes sense. You're going to use that and use it to fund player compensation. So is it going to happen in time for this football season? I don't know. Maybe. But is it coming eventually? For sure.
So you had just mentioned, obviously the Big Ten Network just signed a huge deal, Big Ten Conference.
Yep.
But as far as those TV deals, media rights, all that stuff, that is a ton of money.
It is.
And once again, the players are like, hey, where is our cut at?
Yep.
Like, what's going on? So I do think another thing that's coming very shortly is revenue sharing, where there is a percentage. So in the NFL, I don't know the exact percent, but I think it's somewhat close to 50-50, where the NFLPA gets 50% of the revenue made between, media deals and all that stuff. And so the players get 50, and then the NFL keeps the 50.
Yep.
So I think we're headed for something like that in the future.
So it's the thing about the NFL is it's not 50-50 for like all revenue. It's 50-50 for the TV deal itself. Right. So you get so out of all revenue, TV is probably half, right? Maybe a little bit less than half. I think Penn State's revenue last season was like 125 million ish for football. If every Penn State fan that's in, right, this is easy math, right? 100,000 people in the stadium. At $10 a person making a donation, you've got $1 million.
Dude, I know. So that's what I keep hearing. And here's the thing with that. I feel like the fans are tired of hearing that. They don't. And here's my thing. I don't even really blame them because I've had some conversations and they say, hey, season tickets are what, $15,000, in some cases $20,000. You have to travel to Penn State. Yep. We are in the middle of nowhere. Yep. Hotels are absurd. You either have to fly into State College, which is ridiculously expensive, or you have to fly into BWI, Philly, and then drive here 3 hours. So if you don't live close, it's not easy at all. And now we're going out and we're saying, hey, give us another $100 a month or even just a year. And it's like, why is that my responsibility? Yep. Because I don't see Ohio State, Michigan really asking their fans for that. So I think I'm just speaking for the fans here and what I've seen, especially on Twitter. It feels like they're tired of being asked for money.
They are definitely tired of being asked for money. It's delicate, right? Penn State fans and again, like, this is from when you were a little kid, right? Penn State changed its pricing model for Beaver Stadium. Okay, they introduced something called STEP. This was legit 20 years ago, and effectively, the seat licensing at $600, $300, $100, right? That was all new to Penn State, like seats between the 40s. Okay, all of this stuff that was implemented was met by the biggest horrified reaction from Penn State fans in the world. Right?
Wait,
Like,
so it used to be, let's just say $50 a ticket, and you just sat wherever.
well, no, you sat where your season tickets were, which was by, in a lot of ways, like Nittany Lion Club donations in the first place, how many points you had,
Right.
but also how long you had them. So if your grandfather had them and like kind of bequeathed them, you could have great seats and not pay an additional license on top of it. Whereas at Ohio State, at Michigan, things had been implemented 15, 20 years before, saying like tickets were wildly inexpensive at Penn State compared to some of the teams that they're competing against in the Big Ten. So that was met with horror. Okay. And now you fast forward and here, it's all in Penn State's timeline. It is this constant state of progress being forced upon everyone, the community at large, right? Seat licensing, that's a huge deal. Okay, they brought that in, that was met with horror. Facilities.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Putting money into facilities, met with horror, like dragging cricket,
Yeah, dude.
kicking and screaming.
Since I got here, it was always like, we need to catch up on facilities. This is our biggest issue.
Yeah.
We were kind of set back. It's like they don't really want to mention it, but there's a lot of things that other places have completely done and refurbished 2 times over, and it's like we're still on our one from 1980. So
when they did, I was at the Board of Trustees meeting this past last spring about the second floor renovations that are happening to Lash right now. And one of the things that they said, I mean, it was wild. When that building was introduced, and it was conceived by Penn State fans, or perceived, I should say, by Penn State fans to be like, oh, this is cutting edge in 1999 when it was first happened for the Lash building. One of the things they said at that Board of Trustees meeting was that the HVAC unit in Lash, in the second floor, had not been touched since it was implemented, right?
Oh, wow.
So you're talking about 25 years without any movement there in terms of like regular maintenance things. Everybody's heard the stories about Bill O'Brien. Everybody's heard the stories about James Franklin coming in and saying, hey, guys, we need new carpet, right? You need new things in your facilities to make it look right for the players that you're trying to bring into the program. Not just players, any personnel, anybody that works for a company wants to work and live in comfortable spaces. And so that was another thing that Penn State fans had a problem with. They've come around to that a little bit more, and now NIL is kind of this latest stage where it's a shared responsibility. You got to rely on your whales and your corporate donors as much as you possibly can to fund that NIL pot, but you need support. You need support from fans, and it has been right. Nick Saban asked his wealthy donors. I mean, that's kind of what makes the world go around a little bit. Is you got wealthy guys, wealthy women, their families, their businesses who support things. They are boosters for a reason. He was talking about it a couple of years ago. Ryan Day, heard on it's like these hidden microphones where nobody's trying to announce what they want or what they need, but asking for $13 million, asking for $15 million. That's real.
I do. I noticed that, and it does seem like other coaches go out and ask for help. I think it's hard too, and I've talked to a couple people about this, is like, State College is a fairly new place. Like it hasn't been a big city. I mean, this isn't a big city. We don't have a ton of huge corporations. There's not a lot of that. And you go to Columbus, Ann Arbor. I mean, those are real cities. State College is here because of Penn State. So it's kind of difficult when you realize like that money where they're saying they're trying to go out and get deals for guys. That's so much harder to do here. It's a ton of mom and pop shops, and it's family owned businesses, and not these huge corporations, like I said, out in whatever, in Alabama, in Columbus, around there. So it's difficult. But I do think the draw of having to get NIL money is obviously in the near future going to become less of a problem, and more, how are we going to go about these salaries? Because I think we can both agree salaries are coming in the near future. I don't know. Now, we don't know if that's in a year. Is that in 3 years? I think it's going to become closer sooner rather than later. How I see it, the way we're going.
Yeah, I think sooner rather than later is right. I think that the major question right now is the Big Ten and SEC specifically got to break off from the NCAA, because the NCAA and again, it's tough to talk about it in a vacuum without mentioning broadly. It's a member institution organization, right? All the NCAA is people voted on and appointed by universities, right? So this is higher academia, like higher ed is the ones that are installing these people. And here's the thing about higher ed. There are tax dollars that go to it that basically enforce federal rules. There are federal laws, Title IX being one of the biggest among them, saying, hey, if you give this money to this, or you implement this or operate this way, you got to abide by the law. You have to provide the same resources. You have to do the same things for your student athletes that are female, right?
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's a high hurdle to try to be able to get over while you're still paying football and men's basketball. And so if they can't figure that out, then it goes to the Big Ten and the SEC, maybe, to say, hey, we're not going to be part of this anymore. We're just going to bail.
Well, it's getting to the point where, like, NCAA is losing every court case.
They are.
They almost feels like they have no jurisdiction anymore. They're saying, hey, Tennessee, you're in trouble. Wherever else, Florida, whatever, you're in trouble. Yep. And they go, no, we're not in trouble, actually.
That's correct.
And then the courts go, yeah, you're not in trouble. And it's like, okay, so what governance do you even have? Why do we have you anymore? Yep. So that's how I see it, too. I don't think the NCAA, honestly, will really even be a thing that much longer. And I know that makes some people angry, but I think that's a big-time reality as well.
It could be for lacrosse, right?
Yeah.
It could be for softball.
Well, I think that's where it starts to get so messy. It's like, now, how do you go about sport by sport? I mean, that's cool to say from a standpoint of the NCAA, but let's say Penn State. I mean, what does that funding look like and scholarships look like for lacrosse? You still got to make sure this is fair under the eyes of the university. And I know it can't always be, but there's Title IX issues that you are still going to have to stay within to a certain extent.
It is very, very complicated. But my thing with paying players, right? Like, where's the money coming from, right? The money is coming from the sports that Penn State football is currently funding, okay? If you think that those sports are valuable, if there is a place for those sports and you need those to enrich the university, which is the argument of a broad-based athletic department in the first place, 31 sports. It's not just, hey, we're doing this for fun. This is how you get great relationships. You foster a connection to the university. You get these people, once that women's tennis player graduates and starts a career and becomes very successful in something other than tennis, she gives back to the university. All of those things are good. If you support the mission of non-rev athletics, pay for them. Right? Pay for them. Figure that out, because on the same token, it is not fair. It is not the same to be a Penn State football player as a women's tennis player. They're not the same things.
Yeah, I can agree with that. But I think it does get messy. But I think everybody agrees. The sports that generate the most are going to continue to gain the most.
Yes.
Let's we have been talking a little Penn State, but I want to get a little more Penn State NIL specific here. We talked about why we fell behind the 8 ball and how, even facilities, NIL, everything was kind of behind. But honestly, we didn't really talk about why we're behind in NIL, because that's newer. I mean, that's something that everybody kind of got at the same time. It got hit with everybody, every coach. It fell into their lap. Hey, you have the ability to make that money. And I know we talked about, SEC essentially already having that. They get to say, hey guys, they texted the group chat, hey, we get to do this legally now. This is awesome. So Saban and the boys were happy down south. But up here, it was like, all right, let's find a plan. Yeah. And now you see Ohio State just said they spent $34 million to field their coaches and their roster as a whole. And I just think that's like, wow, you see that. It's like, okay. and you see the players, Judkins, the guys they brought in,
Yep.
it's like, okay, how as Penn State do we bridge that gap?
Yep.
I mean, what is that? What is the gap? I think what is the gap
Yep.
is what a lot of fans are asking. I don't know. Do we have that answer?
We don't, but we do. Right?
Yeah.
It's big. It's
It's
big.
big,
It's,
yeah.
it's a big gap. It is a big gap. You know, I think that there were some complicated missteps at the front end of this. When did you commit? What class? Were you?
I was 2021.
2021. Okay, so it just happened, right?
Yeah, my first, it was my summer.
You had already committed.
I had already committed. I came here for spring ball. We got it there in the summer, that July 1st.
Okay.
We sat down in a meeting and they say, hey, NIL is going forward. And that whole season, it wasn't, I remember like Jahan maybe had a little bit of a couple deals coming through, but he wasn't even making that much. Like no one knew from a corporate or business standpoint what NIL was.
Yep.
And it was always so like, stay away from the players. Like you can't talk to them. So I think that first season was kind of like, okay, what's happening? So it really wasn't until I'd say the winter and then like spring of 2022 where you really saw it to take off and guys were making some real cheddar.
Do you remember what the first program was called that Penn State implemented as its athletic department? Do you remember that?
No, what was it?
It's called the Statement Plan.
Okay? Oh no.
Yeah, and
clearly didn't go too well.
It didn't connect, right? It didn't resonate with you and some of your peers because the push was to educate and create entrepreneurs within the football program.
Okay.
Which is, hey, that's nice. That's cool. That's not a bad thing to want.
It's very Penn State of us to do. Very Penn State of us.
Thank you.
That's very Penn State to do is talk, educate and grow yourself instead of just throw money. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But continue.
But there was two things about it, right? The first is you understand how it's going to be received, how NIL is going to be received by the Penn State community, which is not great, right? It's not like there's a bunch of businesses out there who are saying, hey, we're making all this money and now you want to tax us like the mob, effectively, right? You're saying, okay, well, hotels in State College, athletic stores in State College, right? You're selling all this Penn State gear. Now you're not forced to pony up, but pony up, right? So that's not met well in the first place. And then the second thing is Penn State fans in general are just, I think, have a distance from feeling as though it's the right thing to do to pay players. So the right thing to do was say, hey, we're going to educate these players on how to enrich themselves financially by making sound business decisions, right? Like this, it had this whole aura of Ivy League, like, oh, this is for the betterment, right? But nobody else was doing that. No, everybody else was doing, hey,
let's win some football games.
Let's win some football games, and not only like, how do you win football games? You entice players to come to your school. How do you entice them to come to your school? By paying them. Now you can pay them. Penn State wasn't upfront about that. They were not in front of that. You had multiple collectives all working kind of against each other at Penn State.
Yeah, I think that was a huge problem that no one talked about, is having 2-3 collectives, and I think a lot of the fans don't even know what's going on. And I think there's a lot of fight for glory and who gets to be that collective. So when everybody's working separate, it's hard to reach that common goal. So it gets real spicy, but we find ourselves here, and it is April. By the time anybody listens to this, May of 2024. I mean, NIL's in full effect. I went to high school with Caleb. I saw him before. Now, I mean, he just got drafted, but this dude was making absurd amount of money, and that's the real future and real reality if you're a top college football star these days.
Yep.
And how would you say, like, Happy Valley United? How are they handling this as a whole from what you've seen, and how have you felt that the fans have perceived what Happy Valley United is and what they're trying to achieve, which is Happy Valley United is the third-party collective for Penn State as a whole. They get the money in from businesses, corporate donors, whatever, and they have the players, do something for it, pay the players directly through the collective.
They're getting better. Okay, the intent is in the right place. They are trying. It's hard. It's hard. You need relationships. You're effectively starting from scratch, right? Colleges, universities have development offices that have long-standing relationships with donors. Penn State for forever has done a great job as a university of soliciting donations and getting donations for scholarships, right? Like that's something that's always been fully funded at Penn State. Is athletic scholarships have always been paid for. That's great. But now you're trying to change the message and say, hey, this is what is necessary to compete at this level, and it is literally give us as much money as you possibly can so that we can divide it up the way that we see best fit, wink wink, right? And then you pay your players, and it is an evolution. It is a slog getting through that. So I think that the problem right now for Happy Valley United is they have to, and it's not just Happy Valley United, it's like Penn State football as a whole. They have to scratch and claw for every dollar that comes in, every single dollar. And that is tough. That is a tough way to get by, because you're trying to, the messaging is, hey, what does it take to keep up? What does it take to get to that level? And you're going to fall behind. Nobody ever says at Penn State, what does it take to beat our opponent?
Right, get ahead.
To get ahead. Nobody ever says that. And I don't know if that's something that will never be embraced by the Penn State community or not. I mean, again, I'm just watching it, right? I'm 50,000 feet, and I'm just looking down. Yeah. And I'm saying this is a fascinating case study in human behavior.
It is. I mean, I'd say my biggest takeaway from the fans is that a lot of them want to know, like, where directly is my money headed? Yeah. I feel like that's one of the biggest comment sections that I've seen with, I think Retain the Roar is pretty specific of what that is. You're helping retain the team, retain the Roar. Yeah. So I, obviously get the message there, but it's like, when I'm donating to you, what, is this to help to retain a player? Am I paying salaries? Am I paying a player to go do something with a charity? Do I get to see them do this with the charity? Like, what is that? What am I paying for? I think that is something that can really help bridge that gap if you start to really educate them and show them, hey, this allows the players to do X, Y, Z. And if that's give them a car, then that's what it is. I mean, I've seen a couple, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's like some TikToks that have went viral of the Florida Gators football facility parking lot. And it is like, it's just like straight sport cars. It's like what you'd expect. It's like every single car is just a nice souped up sports car. And it's like, that's the reality. That's what it is now.
It's 100% the
reality. That's what you're funding. But if you want to win, that's what you have to do. It's like, I feel like on the both fronts, it's so hard, because it's like, I want to say the fans and these donors don't have to do anything, but does it fall on them? Is it their responsibility when we start to lose to the fans? I feel like that was kind of some of the messages they felt they got was, hey, we're not doing as good. You guys need to give more so we can keep up. Yeah. I mean, is that kind of how you received it as well?
I think two things are happening at the same time. The system itself is very dumb right now. This is a dumb bridge to the future. There will be a future where this isn't the way it operates. But right now, the second thing is it is. This is it. This is what it is right now. And if your expectations are to beat Ohio State and Michigan, why would you think it takes anything less than what they're doing to match them? Right? I mean, that's the bottom line of this is why, like, I interact with fans every day. And it is a chicken or the egg game that in their minds, that I don't necessarily understand how it can be perceived that way, which is, if you coach well enough, James Franklin specifically, if you coach well enough and outfox them, right? Like, we are asking you to take lesser players, right? Players that you can afford, which you cannot afford the players on the other sideline. But if you take these players and outfox those players, we will pay you. We will at that point support the NIL endeavor of Penn State.
Yeah, well, and I think something that's interesting is Ohio State has been lacking these past couple years, and this past year it was like, what the heck was that, Ryan Day? What are you doing?
Correct.
And now you see just support coming out of the woodwork. They're saying, Ryan Day, we got your back. We're giving you all the funds, $34 million to field your team and coaches. James Franklin doesn't have that. He's not getting that support, and that's the reality of it. Now, if that's on the fans, donors, is that on, do we need to find big-time corporations to fund better NIL deals?
Yep.
Whatever that looks like, I don't think we all know, but that's just the reality of the situation is James Franklin's not getting that support that Ryan Day or Jim Harbaugh or anybody has had so far in NIL, these big teams.
Correct. And their argument is, well, Jim Harbaugh proved it, and that's why. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Not until it got to the point when they were in position to, they got to the playoff a couple of years and lost, right? And instead of the perception at Penn State coming off of, pick a year, 2016 for facilities, 2017 for facilities, 2019 for facilities, 2022, Penn State goes, 10-2 and wins the Rose Bowl. Instead of being energized and motivated by that, it's you haven't beaten these teams. Prove it. 2023, it's the exact same thing. You win all of these games, you're in a position, and where these other competitors, these other programs, have been motivated and energized by what it takes, this little window of what it takes to get up over the top. It's like, hey, we're not there. We need to do this to get there. At Penn State, and again, I'm not even arguing against it necessarily, but their argument is, hey, we're not going to do this. We will not support this until you prove that you can win those games. But I have this message. I am the angel of death here. James Franklin is not going anywhere. He is not going anywhere. He is locked into a massive contract that Penn State, if you think Penn State can't afford to pay its players, it cannot afford to fire James Franklin.
Yeah, absolutely not. $80 million? That's not happening.
And here's the ultimate message of death. If you think that James Franklin is annoying for asking for NIL, right, for pushing that message of support, if you think any of this is annoying or not the Penn State way, do you know what the next guy, right? Forget James Franklin. If he gets fired, if he leaves, whatever, do you know what the next guy's going to ask for that sits in that seat? Dollars. That's it. This is the way that it works. Matt Rule, I don't care who you are.
No, I mean, I do feel like it's at a point where it's like they're mad at Franklin for asking, but you're asking him to win games. I mean, it's just like you kind of just keep going back in a circle. It's this circle answer of what do you want him to do? So my question is, where are the mega donors maybe that Ohio State has? I know that their AD is a big-time oil guy. I think was he a Texas A&M dude?
He was.
So, I mean, I'm sure he's got some connections down there, but I think part of that bridging that gap is like these big-time donors, Terry Pagula, those big names. How do we get them involved and wanting to support this? Because no one knows how much they have given, what that looks like. I mean, we really don't know. But I think that's the other big thing is not just the fans or these corporations, but you got to get those billion-dollar people that support your university. Those are the guys you have to get involved in NIL at this point because that's what it is. I mean, that's how much money it is going to require to field a top 10 team in college football.
They're trying. They're trying. Everybody's trying, right? Penn State internally, the football program is trying. The collective is trying. All of those different, right? They're trying, but Terry Pagula owns Buffalo Bills, right? He's got a stadium project.
Yeah, Orchard. He's completely redoing Orchard Park up there.
That costs money, right? This stuff costs money, and so there is an element to this of, is Penn State unlucky, right? The football program, unlucky that its wealthiest humans that exist are unable or unwilling to give? Maybe a little. Is there another side of it that says, hey, Penn State's wealthiest donors, it is the responsibility, fair or unfair, of James Franklin to get their support, right? Here's the thing. No matter what the timeline is, James Franklin will not be the head coach of Penn State forever, okay? I will likely still be covering the team and the program at that point when that happens. Regardless of what happens, when I write the obituary of Penn State football under his tenure, it's that for whatever reason, his leadership was not able to get the support of what was needed, right? To like, it takes a total community to do this. And Penn State, for a ton of reasons, financially and otherwise, there's some stuff, like I hate to reference it directly, but some stuff happened in 2012.
Yeah, we got it right there. We're proud to support Penn State football. I mean, I will say, I think there is, I will add to that real quick. I think there is those old head Paterno people that, first off, weren't fully sold on Franklin. So it gets to a point where it's like, hey, I don't fully support this guy. I'm still stuck on the kind of the past. Do I want to give this guy money? So I think that's another problem that James Franklin is facing, is like he's still fighting that turnover from Paterno to, I mean, it was Bill O'Brien first, but really that turnover from Paterno to Franklin, he's still kind of fighting that. And then you add NIL on top of that. I mean, those are just huge pressures being thrown at James Franklin. It is really hard to handle. I do want to ask you real quick that I know at other schools this is definitely going on, but not really here at Penn State. Franklin has said he tries to get everybody something on the team. At other schools, I mean, it seems like starters are paid handsomely well, and it kind of drops off from there. Do you see Penn State starting to take that approach? Because it seems like that's where a lot of schools are going. If you're a starter, if you're rotating in, you're going to see some good money. If you're fourth string, you're not seeing anything.
Yeah. At some point, right? I don't know if it's coming this year or what the timeline looks like on that, but yeah, I think an evolution is probably coming to that, where, I mean, really it's your top 24-ish, right? 20-ish, 24 players are getting 75% of the compensation. I think that you've already seen a shift in the marketplace where you're not paying incoming recruits, right? When NIL first started, it was like, hey, throw all this money at a 5-star quarterback.
Yeah, 17-year-old
coming out of high school.
Right.
And now it's like, well, wait a second. How about you throw all that money at a 22-year-old who has proven it for 3 years at a lesser division, whatever it is, get that money and pay them out of the portal. That's kind of how things are trending in the first place. And yeah, I think you're going to see more of that compensation directed towards players who are playing, players who are, and by position, right? If you are a star, it in so many ways, this should and likely will mimic the NFL. Defensive end, you're going to get paid. Quarterbacks, you're going to get paid. Receivers, you're going to get paid, right? Running backs, not so much.
Yeah, who cares? Hey, my question is, like, does it get to a point where and it has gotten to this point for some people in other sports, especially, where it's like, hey, you're going to be making more staying in college.
For sure.
But that's, Caleb Williams, and we talked like Angel Reese and those people. But I'm talking now the average, let's say someone who's getting drafted, let's say a Chop Robinson, a Olu Fashanu. Does it get to the point here in a couple years where you are head and shoulders, making more than you're going to make, even those type, not even just if you're a mega star, if you're a pretty big star, is it almost like, hey, I'm comfortable staying here. I'm making absurd amount of money in college, and I don't have to go get on that rookie deal, even though the rookie deals at the first round is nice. But is that also a reality that could be coming in the near future, or you think?
I think that probably the top rounds, that's not even really a consideration. There's the second complicating factor of this is the COVID year, right? The bonus year. So if you've already spent your 4 years of eligibility, then it's a real decision, right? Because if you're a 7th round draft choice or an undrafted free agent and you have an opportunity to come back and choose not to, yeah, you're probably leaving money on the table because you are, in fact, more valuable to your college team with that 23-year-old version of you than you are as a 23-year-old going to the NFL, right? That's kind of a bottom line reality to that. So yeah, I think that that's a possibility. But I do think guys who have played Abdul Carter, right? He's not turning down the NFL and a first, second, third round contract, whatever that is, wherever he ends up going, probably on the upper end.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That, off those just natural abilities, I think he will easily find his way into the first round.
Yeah, but you know, a guy like Curtis Jacobs, right? Now it's interesting to consider. Hey, was there an opportunity for him to come back to Penn State with an extra year, with that COVID year, right? Because he started in 2020. So this would have been his COVID year if he chose to pursue it versus taking that route to the NFL. But my thing with you guys that's so fascinating to me is a lot of you're just tired of college.
It does. It's being in the college city and going to class. Dude, it gets tiring. We saw a couple players in the past say, I'm here to not. Other teams say I'm here to play football, not play school.
Yeah,
who was that? That was a legend. Some quarterback. I think it was Ohio State.
Braxton Miller.
It was one of them. It was Braxton Miller, one of those guys.
Cardell Jones.
Yeah, Cardell Jones. That was it. Cardell Jones, who could throw the football a mile. I'm here to play football, not play school. That is how guys end up start to feel, especially once you're in that fifth year, and then guys come back for sixth year. And not to mention, the NFL, they take care of you. Your body is taken care of. It is all about recovery, rest. College football, you are being grinded into the ground. That is the hard truth and reality. You have seen spring ball practices. Spring ball practices don't really exist for the NFL. You are putting on pads for 15 practices 2 months after the season. I am a huge advocate to get rid of spring ball. I just want to put that out there.
Okay.
I want it eradicated. I want it gone. It can be a teaching thing, but I think it is ridiculous after a 5-month season to then put the pads back on for another month and a half, just 2 months later. So that's a whole nother discussion, but I think that is part of the reason why some people will say, hey, I'm headed to the league.
Enough.
I don't need to go through this college stuff anymore. Let's get that contract started so I can make my way to that second contract where ultimately a lot of guys start to find that real compensation that they're seeking. But, man, I think that is pretty much it for today. Nate Bauer, there's still so much more to get into, but, I mean, you could talk about this NIL, especially at Penn State, all around. Talk about it for hours. So we will definitely get into more of this in the near future. And I'm excited to keep cracking this open with different people, and it should be a lot of fun. But Nate Bauer, thank you for being the first guest on the NIL Education Podcast here.
So high. Just trying to survive.